gosh. Okay, so technically we are here. This is a celebration of 5 years of the Wine and Chisme podcast. And I
You
get
read
to
my
do it
mind.
with my girl, Erica Sanchez of
Hola,
Great
hola.
Communications. Hey, girl.
My partner in crime, Jessica.
Yes. You know what? It's so crazy. So, technically, the official anniversary of the podcast is February 17th. That February 17th of 2020. So, like right on that verge of the pandemic, but really pre-pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is when I launched. And now it's 5 years. I mean, legit, it is so crazy to comprehend that it has been 5 years of Wine and Chisme.
It goes by fast. And I feel like I've mentioned this to you before how people say like at the 5 year mark is really when your business kind of takes its stride and really is like a defining moment. Um, so I'm excited. I mean, I'm not gonna say what's going on because you're still cooking. I'm gonna let you cook, like the
We're
kids
still
say.
cooking. We're still cooking.
Like the
No.
kids say, I'm gonna let her cook. But there's so many things that are like happening this year that I'm so excited for
I
you.
know, me too. And the crazy thing is obviously a lot of things have happened in the world, in my life, in your life, and in everything in 5 years. A lot can change in a year, even.
Mm.
But the one constant in the last 5 years is I've been here at this mic, being able to learn from so many guests, have so many guests on. I mean, I put it on a social post, but I really want to kind of share what has happened in the 5 years. I mean, not everything, right? But
Mm-hmm.
in regards to the podcast. And okay, so when I think of 5 years, we there's well, this is now, I think this might be episode 240 now.
Mm.
Oh, no, it's 239. So 239 episodes.
Oh, wait. What are you drinking?
Oh my God, girl. Okay, so I actually wanted to bring it back. So the very, very first Latino owned winery that's based in the US, right? Because there's like based in the
Right.
US, Latino owned winery was Seis Soles. But I've been drinking a lot of Seis Soles yet, and I really don't want to open this bottle because I love this bottle. Maybe I should. But so me and Chris Rivera, the owner of Seis Soles Wines, we've literally been like this since, because we both started at the same time. And if you can't see me, I'm like crossing my feet, like been like two peas in a pod, because he started his wineries and he was the first one to reach out to me. And I drink his wine a lot because his wine is delicious. I had reached out to Mava, I think before I had maybe around the same time or right before um I had me and Chris met. And at the time, the president was Guillermo. And so I went ahead and pulled out. I think this might be one of my. Actually, no. So it was Guillermo and then on his wife Angelica. And when I went to Napa for the first time, they introduced me to Miriam and her husband Juan, and Lola and her husband Oscar, who they all have their own wine brands. So what I'm drinking is from Miriam and Juan's winery called Ondrama Cellars. And um, it's a 2019 Hab. So, girl, I'm going big. I'm going big
You're
today.
going. You're being bold.
I'm being bold and big, and so I'm having one of their cabs, which is I haven't opened in a while. Oh my gosh, this smells so good. I wish I could. I wish you
I
could
wish there was like
smell
a
it.
scratch and sniff.
Right here, guys. Here, try it. If you're watching this on YouTube, here I'm putting it to. There you go.
Mm.
It is so good. So, what are you drinking, Erica? Did you get wine?
I
Come on, we're
I didn't.
celebrating 5 years.
I didn't get wine only because
What
I
did
have
you?
to run an errand after the episode, and
And Erica's a
And
new
I'm a driver
driver.
now,
Yeah,
right?
she's a
I'm
driver.
upset. Had I been in New York City, I would have been downing it.
Oh, the
The
RGNY. You
RGNY.
know we love our RGNY.
Yep, this nice white sparkling is what I
Yes.
wanted to put in the fridge today, and then life took over this morning.
Well, you know what? We have all year to celebrate 5 years.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. We have all year to celebrate 5 years. Okay, well, salud.
Salud.
Mm. Oh, I this is
Salud,
so
dinero y
freaking
amor.
good. This is so freaking good. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you that you have to drink water right now.
Um,
But yes, 5 years. Oh my gosh. Okay, so now let me go back to what I was saying. We have 238 episodes. This is be 239. Over 200 guests. And there's been a couple where I did a two-parter or a couple where I've done solo episodes, multiple that we've
mhm.
done. So it might be over 200 guests. I'm sure it is over 200 guests, but at the minimum it's been 200 guests. Um Countless bottles of wine. I don't even know how many bottles of wine have been
Approximately
over the
200 and
no, way more because when I've gone to well, no, okay, specifically for the podcast, yeah, for sure, close to that. However, I've gone to different tastings and different things, like even when we went to New York, right? When we went to
right,
RGNY, how many bottles were maybe not open, but how many wines were tried? So
right,
it's
right.
yeah, it's definitely a significant amount. We've had 6 unforgettable live events. Um 8 virtual wine tastings. We have we've had over 50,000 downloads in the last 5 years.
That's fantastic.
And to some that might not be a lot, but I'm like honestly, the podcast space just continues to grow and grow and grow. And so to have that many people either continually listen or new people be exposed and continue to listen or even listen once. That's a really huge accomplishment. And
Yep.
I know it's over 50,000 at this point. I have to look at the exact number, but the goal for this year, I'm not even gonna lie, let me throw it out,
Put it in the universe.
putting it in the universe. The goal for this year is to have an average of 1,000 downloads per episode. Not because I've been averaging between 800 and 1,000, 800 and 1,200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
No. That's what we want to do per episode.
Yes.
And I don't know. I mean, Erica, like let's be totally frank and honest. Erica is my PR person. I do come from a communications background. However, when it comes to yourself, it becomes a mess. So Erica and I met, and I think we've shared this before, but if you've never heard it,
Right.
we met through Yana,
Yes.
who is the sweetest, um, because she worked with Ellie.
Yes. It's all connected. It's
And
all connected.
and Ellie has done these, months and things with me as well. So Yana was working with Ellie, who they pitched me an author. And then she went to go work with you. And then she was like, oh, I know somebody who we could pitch. Then she
Mm-hmm.
pitched me. And then um in 2020, let's see, it's 2022 was the summer of 2022 when I took my nephew
I think it was
to
2021. No?
no, I think it was 2020 because last year was
2022. Yes.
2024.
Yes. 22.
Yeah.
Yes.
I took my nephew to New York for a week that was his high school graduation present. Best dia ever. And I was like telling a lot of people I've made so many amazing friends and contacts on the East Coast. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be here. And you're like, hey, let's get together for lunch. Drag my poor little nephew with me because we did not know. Lunch turned into drinks, turned into happy hour, turned into almost dinner time.
Yes, yes.
And that's how we met. Obviously, that's how we met in person. We just had such a great vibe with
Yeah.
one another. And then when I was like, okay, I need somebody to work with, I was like, you know what? I really want to work with Erica.
And I
And
was so excited.
no, it's been so great. So I I don't know. I mean, is there anything that I haven't told you about like me starting the podcast that you've ever wondered?
No.
I've told you everything, right?
You've told me everything.
Okay.
And I
Well,
love
here's
that.
okay. I'm going to share basically the whole, like, because we're celebrating, and I know that there's been people who maybe don't necessarily know how this podcast got started or how the directory got started or any of these things because maybe they're new or maybe they, have listened for a couple of years, but they just like missed it, that portion, right?
Right.
So actually this was in my mind since 2019. And it started as a vlog. I was going to get with my girlfriend and we were going to do it. Started out by me actually having conversation. Let me back up. Having conversation, and I was talking to my girlfriend Courtney, and I was saying how, God, there's nothing, like I was 42, I think, and 41 at that time. No, I was 41 at that time, and I was like, I always feel like my demographic gets ignored because there's always like the 18 to 24, 25 to 30, or 26 to 35 demographic that everybody is always after. And it almost
Mm-hmm.
feels like as soon as you pass that, you become invisible to
Yes.
so many. And I was like, that makes no sense. I said, and somebody said something about middle. I'm like, I'm not quite midlife yet. At least I don't feel like it, right? Even now, I mean, I'm fully middle aged, but I do not feel like it at all. And girl, I don't look like it either.
Thank
Eh.
God. Thank God.
Right? Um, and so that's kind of what started. And I was like, you know what? That would kind of be a cool name for something. I didn't know what it was. And then I started talking to my friends who were, you know, getting divorced or getting into a new relationship, or they're like the next phase of their children's life was starting. They were becoming empty nesters or their kid, stuff like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much here that we could talk about. And so I started a vlog called on YouTube called Not Quite Midlife with my girlfriend Catherine. But the problem was when you are working with somebody on something every week, like schedule times to coordinate everything. Like the first couple episodes were great, and then it started like, oh, I can't. I'm doing this on this. Oh, I can't. Da da da. Because we would do it on the weekends because we both worked full time, and I was,
Mm-hmm.
I was in Orange. Well, no, I was already here. No, I was already here. I think it was just timing, whatever. So, oh yeah, no, it was 2019. So I was still living in Orange County before I moved back down to San Diego. So I would have to drive, an hour and a half, do that. And so, anyways, I was like, you know what? This is not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
Right.
And my friend Pam from Cafe con Pam, who I have shouted out many a time, we had met and we'd become friends by that point. And I was just like, she was the one who was like, you should do a podcast. You should do a podcast. Do it. And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, look, I'm creating this thing for people who want to learn how to do podcasts. Like, I'll give you access to it. You can be a beta tester. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. And I was like, okay. And that's how it went from video to audio, right? It went from just a video, like only video,
Mm-hmm.
only a vlog type of thing um, to an actual podcast, and went through names, went through like, you know, the initial name was going to be Amor con Labios. That's what it was. Okay. That's what it was. Amor con Labios. The reason it was going to be that is because, you know, when you are experiencing, you can share love through your mouth, right? Through the words that you speak.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're with somebody, intimately through those lips.
Alternatively.
Alternatively, right? I don't know, like it was just kind of provocative, and I thought but like, and I had hired somebody and paid somebody to do some design work for me, and like, girl, I was going forward with that name.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to lunch. We were at this not Hispanicized. We were at one of the event. It's the Latitude. We were at the Latitude
Mm.
event with some friends, and it I was talking about my birthday, and I was gonna say I was inviting them, and I said we're just gonna wine and cheese, meh, like joking
Mm-hmm.
around. And Patty Delgado from Hija de Tu Madre was like, "This were her exact words: Bitch, you better use that name because you know I love a good pun, and I will start an Instagram with that name if you don't." And I was like, and I'd already been thinking, oh, maybe I should change. And then like it was just
Mm-hmm.
my like initial, so it didn't really mean anything. And I was already thinking I should change the name. And then earlier somebody's like, you know what, you should probably change your name. And I was like, oh my gosh, confirmation I need. And then so it was just
Right.
like the universe like revealing those things to me. And I was like, all right, cool. Let's do it. I'm gonna do it. And I changed the name. There was already a wine and chisme. There still is a wine and chisme podcast or not podcast account there. But they haven't used it since like 2017 or
Let
20.
it
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Let it go, let it go. So I was like, fine, you can be wine and chisme because I am the wine and chisme. And that's, like how the name came about. And then I was like, what am I going to do? And I had so many people in my life that were like giving me timelines because I work well on timelines. Don't give me don't say, oh, just do it when you do it. It will never get done. If you're just like, just do it. If you're like, okay, this has to be done, or if I give myself a timeline, this has to be done by this, I work way better under deadlines than not. I'm not even going to lie. And so I had I just started asking my friends who I thought were had interesting stories if they would come on, and then I would start posting like on Facebook groups, hey, I've just started this podcast, and I had so many people reach out, and the name changed from the podcast from um Amor con Labios to the Wine and Chisme because I just couldn't get Wine and Chisme out of my head.
Mm.
And it just felt so much more like me. And I could still like, and my biggest thing was like, oh, I could talk to anybody about anything because we can choose me out about anything.
Right.
And it doesn't limit me to only talking to this and only talking to that, or only talking about this subject and not. The one thing that I knew from the beginning that was kind of my North Star, and it continues to be, is I wanted this to be a place where we amplified voices across communities of color. Because my friends come from across communities of color. And
Mm-hmm.
we would have all of these truly amazing conversations. So when things were happening in 2020, where it felt like people were having these conversations for the first time, I could say, hey, you want to come on the podcast and talk about this? Because we've talked about, they're like, yeah, no problem. Because me and my friends had been having these conversations for years.
Right.
So it wasn't uncomfortable. It might have been to some people who were maybe listening to those points of views for the first time. But for me, it wasn't uncomfortable to have these conversations with my friends because we already knew where each other stood. They know what I'm about. I know what they're about. And like I said, we had already had these conversations. So that continues to be my North Star, is to amplify voices across communities of color. And um that's the one, that's how the Wine and Chisme podcast was born, everybody.
Should I do another? Yay! We got to do a couple of those.
Hey, I have it in my editing software. I can do that. It's just so crazy how, like, I remember when I started 5 years ago, how nervous I was. Because when you put your like I'm putting myself out there to
Right.
be like to possibly be ridiculed or people want to I don't people how people are on the internet like they could
Yeah.
whatever. Um but I think I will say this. And tell me if you think I'm wrong, Erica, because you've seen all of the different people who've been on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
No, I will say this. I think one of the reasons I've had so many guests is because I do like to talk to so many people. But I think also I'm not like a gotcha person, right? I'm not like,
Right.
oh, but because I really want to hear your story. Who am I to tell you what your story is?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things I felt when I worked in corporate America, my biggest strength has always been my relationship building skills. And I think that's what makes people feel comfortable when I talk to them is I'm not here to be like, nah, you didn't do that. What? Da, da, da. I will ask questions and in the thing I will in my questionnaire for guests, I do ask if there's anything they don't want to talk about. And I learned that from asking about something that we didn't discuss if we're going to talk about. I was asking about somebody's parents and they're like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
did that. I don't really talk to so and so. And I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. And I was like, oh, wait, I should probably ask people if there's something that they're like, don't want to talk about.
Right.
So it's like
Right.
one of the very first things that evolved that I found out very, very quickly. Um, and then the other is like, I never am going to force anybody to drink. I
Mm-hmm.
had somebody come over and she was like, I'm sober. And I was like, girl, don't even worry about it. Does this make you uncomfortable? She's like, no, it doesn't. You like, I get it. You do what you need to do. You drink and doesn't make me uncomfortable. But,
Right.
and I was like, no problem. Because I always think that's something that people sometimes misconstrue, right? Like, oh, you have to
Mm-hmm.
drink if you're going to be on the podcast.
Right. Right.
I drink. I have to drink because how could I be wine and cheese man and not have some wine?
Well, it's also it's not that you're drinking wine to just drink, right?
Yeah.
Because there's another layer to it, right? With the wine director.
Yes, but that came almost a year and a half later. And I will say this. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to have wine and chisme is because I feel like growing up, so many of us didn't like our parents didn't enjoy wine or they enjoyed box wine or and I use enjoy loosely. They had
Mm-hmm.
box wine because wine always felt so bougie. Like it felt like, what are you gonna do? But you know, I just think of how much has again, how much has happened in 5 years. First of all,
Yeah.
Chris was the very first, Chris Rivera, Seis Soles Wine, was the very first Latino owned wine brand based in the US who was on the podcast. He was the first one to send me wine.
Shout out to Chris. I
Shout
love
out
Seis
to
Soles.
Chris.
I'm waiting for it to come on the East Coast. I'm putting it out there.
Yeah, we got to get it out there. But that was like legit one of my, he was the first one. And when he did that, I was like, there's something here. And I like I said, I had already reached out and I don't think I had come up. Maybe I was like mulling the idea of the wine directory at that point, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like fully formed um in regards to that. And I'm gonna shout out a few of my very first guests, which is Cindy Canek. She was my very, very first guest. Vanessa Miranda, she was one of my guests, Delia Hasso, Aurora Coledo. She was like, especially when you're starting. And there
Mm-hmm.
was two people that I didn't really know within I actually, I think within my first 10 episodes, the people that I actually knew, there was maybe only two or three that I actually knew beforehand. So I was like, so it felt to me like, oh, this space is needed because people are like, yeah, I want to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
It was so crazy. It was so great. Oh my gosh. Like I just think of all of the things now and I'm like, you think, how did that happen?
You know something, Jessica? I want you to push yourself back a little so that everyone at home can see what is going on in this area because it's amazing. You're gonna have to go
Thank
on YouTube to see what it is. So
you know, I've had this necklace for a very, very long time. And look, I'm not somebody who, even with the podcast, you know, during the pandemic, everybody and their mothers, cousins, uncles, monkey had a podcast. And then when people went back to work, like the podcast like fell to the wayside.
yeah, yeah.
But that's not something I ever wanted because like I said, I started it prior to when we were just hearing the whisperings and grumbles, but we didn't really know what was going on. I had already launched. Like I had February 20th, February 17th, we already had the first 3 episodes. I had a launch party on February 20th. And I'm not even gonna lie, like just to see how much people supported, we had probably like 30 people there just to support what I was doing. Just to
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, we're gonna be out here, we're gonna do and we're gonna support you and everything. And so I say that to say I'm sure we all follow trends to a certain extent, but I know there was a point where like chunky necklaces was out, but I never stopped because I know who I am, my style. And that
That's
includes
right.
the podcast. Because and I say that because when I started, I would like you know this now. When we do our monthly like Chisme, like what happened in pop culture stuff, we just kind of write topics. We don't
Right.
write like details. We don't write.
Mm-hmm.
And so initially I would write down questions. So like ask. And I would always try and flow because it wasn't necessarily like in order because it would
Right.
vary. And I would just based on their bio, based on their social, based on their website, whatever, I would come up with these questions. But then I noticed more and more like I was veering from the questions because it was just based on the conversation we were having. Like the
Right. Right.
conversation just took a turn and I was like, "Oh, well what about this or what about that?" And I think I maybe used questions for about 6 months. So for the last 4.5 years, ooh, excuse me, the last 4.5 years, it's everything that we do is pretty much off the cuff. Now I might still look at the web. I will still look at the website. I'll still look at social media. I'll still look at all of
Right.
those things.
Right. Of course.
But my biggest thing is I want to have real conversations with people. I don't want it to be super scripted. Like when there's been so many people who've asked, like, oh, what are the questions you're going to ask? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to
We're
ask
gonna
you.
go on this journey together.
Yeah, we're going to do it together and we're going to see what comes out. Because if you decide you want to, there's been so many times too where people are like, oh, I've never shared this with anybody, but I'm going to say it here. And it
Mm-hmm.
makes
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those comfort things too for me. I'm like, they trust me enough to be able to share this now.
Right. Well, I think I feel like that's the difference too with podcasts, right? Because if we were doing some kind of TV segment or radio segment, right, where it's very much limited to like, there's a time constraint on it, right?
Yeah.
So you have to get in your points, you have to get in kind of the story that you want to build. But with podcasts, you have time. You have time to talk about what it is that you want to talk about, see where the conversation goes. And I feel like that's the biggest difference with podcasting as a medium,
Oh,
where you can just
absolutely.
kind of it's a storytelling. It's a different kind of storytelling.
Oh, for sure. Cause you even think of certain things like you said, when you're watching even entertainment shows, news, whatever, radio, um, and it's only a couple of minutes and you don't
Mm-hmm.
know what they're going to take from that. It could be a 10
Right.
minute interview and they're only using 3 minutes and you don't know
Right.
what part they're going to use. Um, and so if you want to explain something or, things, how often do we hear of things being taken out of context and this and
Right.
that?
Right. Right.
And so um that's what I love about what we do. I love about podcasters is like you say, people could get into the nitty gritty if they want. If they're like, look, I just want to talk about this one thing and I want to talk about it. Well, all right, cool. Let's talk about it.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, you know, it's been very much like I like people to share their story. And I've learned like okay, maybe we don't need to share so much. Let's to get the nuggets of your story, like your origin story, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Want the nuggets of that, and let's work through it, and then really talk about like I love. And now let's talk about where you are and where you want to go, because to me, I always think it's very important to hear where people came from and the struggles that they went through, not just
Yes.
I've seen it on threads where some people are like, I don't want to hear that. And I'm like, well, that's not my audience. Like, or maybe I don't know. Mi gente, tell me, like, is that something you like or don't like? I always like it because I think there's so many people out there they're struggling, they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep their head up. They've gone through so much shit, right? And to
Yeah.
know that somebody might have a similar story or somebody went
Mm-hmm.
through more, and to know that there's hope on the other side, I think is so important.
Right. But I feel like even when people are have this like quote unquote overnight success, right? It's not overnight because maybe they excelled in where they are like at the point that they are now, right? But how did they get to that point to be this quote unquote overnight success, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of things behind that. And I feel like the more you share, like it's just there's comfort in knowing that you're not the only one like struggling or figuring it out, or it's okay to pivot, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be stuck to this plan. Like I hate that for us that we just grew up with like it's the plan and the blinders and that is the
It
plan.
doesn't have to
That's
be. It doesn't
it.
have to be.
And it doesn't have to be at all. And I feel like that is like the biggest disservice that happened to our age group.
Yeah. For sure. So I had asked some people to share some of their favorite moments, whether it was on social, whether it was at a live event, whether it was podcast, whatever. And I want to share some of the things that people shared because it means a lot. Now, mi gente, we're just talking like, because it's 5 years, right? 5 years of guests, 5 years of, the last couple of years of we finally brought events and we're cooking on something now, but we wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it without the support. Erica, thank you for all of the support you have provided. I truly, truly appreciate it because, I tell people I have a PR person who really believes in me. And that's really, I think obviously when you're working with somebody in that way, it's kind of a special relationship that you have to have with
Yeah.
that person, and being able
Yep.
to like vibe and being able to like say, "Oh wait, like identify the things not only that you think would level me up, but you think that I would actually want to do, because those are
Right.
sometimes different, right? Because we share the same values when it comes to our community and when it comes to who we want to share our messaging with. So I just want to
Mm.
make sure that I say thank you very, very much because I
Te quiero
appreciate
mucho, amiga.
it.
Because we're bilingual in this podcast.
Yes. And I want to say thank you to I want to make sure I give a shout out to Juan Pablo. Juan Pablo is my sometimes editor. Right now I've been doing my own editing, but I do still send stuff to him. He came on when my mom was going through breast cancer for the second time, and I couldn't do the editing myself. Like I just didn't have time.
Hmm.
I had time to just spend the time here to record, and then I needed to send it off because I was helping take care of my mom during that time. So, Juan Pablo, I just want to say thank you so much for being such a like at first it was like going back and forth, but now he knows what I like. He knows my style. He like every once in a while just be like, "Oh, can you insert this here or here?" But otherwise, like he knows what I like and we work very seamlessly together. So, Juan Pablo, thank you. And I want to make sure I also give a shout out to my friend Daniel de Jesus, who is supposed to come on. He needs to come on. He has a fascinating story. Um, but he is the one who literally, I said I wanted to do the directory, and he's the one who like put it together for me. Like I put it in a spreadsheet and he got it on the website for me. And even now I'm like, "Oh, here's some new ones to add," and he'll add it for me. And he's also the one who reminds me because feel like I tried to focus on everybody else. He's the one who's like, "No, no, no, you need to get your flowers too. You need to
Oh.
like, he reminds me of that." So I want to make sure I say thank you to Daniel. Okay, so let me share a couple of things. So my friend Diana, we all grow, and a lot of people I've met through TikTok, and we all grow and Instagram. Like I've met so many people through social media. And I was I wanted her on the podcast, and she's like, "Amiga, no, mi inglés no está bien." And I was like, "Okay, when you feel you're ready, I think your English is fine. When you feel you're ready, you tell me and we'll get you on the podcast." So I was not only her very first podcast, but her very first English speaking podcast that
Nice.
she did. And she said, "My favorite moment was when you had me on your show. My first one, well, I will never forget." And then somebody else said, "At the We All Grow Summit, when you encourage us to go to our local wine stores and ask for Latine wine." Because I tell people, go ask, tell them we want some more of these wines. Like, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. I learned
Yes.
that from my mom. Yana said, "My favorite were the LA, Dallas, and New York events. Truly one of my favorite experiences." One of my friends, Giselle, said virtual wine tastings. One of our guests, she said, "This might be controversial." She said, "But the candle moment with Julissa Bermudez was her favorite moment." And let me tell you why she said that. Because she said it didn't let her finish. She goes, "I just love how you both handled the situation, and it reminded me to laugh in life." And if you
Yeah,
guys,
that was a good one.
I would just say, if you guys have not, like, that is one of the moments that I would say, not, you have to watch it. You can't just you can't just listen to it. You have to
Hmm.
watch it. So if you haven't, go to YouTube and watch it. Even if you don't watch the whole thing, if you just want to know what we're talking about, it's within the first few minutes that this event happened. And um it's hi. It's
Oh my gosh. But I mean, it is a good reminder. Like, you have to be able to laugh at things and roll with the punches.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, my thing is, if you can't laugh at yourself, if you can't laugh at life and yourself, like, you're gonna have a
Hmm.
miserable life.
Yep.
Because I am
Yeah.
constant, like, my thing is, when I first, so one of the biggest changes from 5 years ago, specifically when it comes to the podcast, is we've changed music. When I first started the podcast, I literally was like I went to a free music site
Hmm.
and just downloaded that and used it. And then I think after, I can't remember if it was year one or year two, I was like, you know what? I need music. I need like my own music. So Betsy, I want to make sure Betsy is the one who composed the music. I told her what I wanted. And
Ooh,
then
okay.
I was
That I
like,
didn't know.
it was a Latina. It was a Latina who, like, she's a DJ. She's also a mariachi singer. And she like puts together beats and stuff like that. So somebody had referred me to her. So I reached out to her, and I paid her and everything. And um I think her handle is Betsy Gifted Music or something like that on Instagram. So go follow her. And so I would tell her what I wanted. I was like, I just want like an upbeat vibe, like kind of a loungy vibe that you would drink, that brings our culture into it, but also you drink wine too. So we went through a few times, and I was like, can you make it a little bit more upbeat here, blah, blah, blah. So now the music that you hear now that's what we came up with. And it was original specifically for the podcast.
I love that. That I had not heard. That
Yeah,
story I had
yeah,
not heard. You
yeah.
got me. You got me.
I got you. Yes. No, it was amazing. And the fact that, who knows? I'm sure eventually we'll update it or change it. I don't know. But to me, I wanted something that also felt like me, like when I'm home, when I'm hanging out with my friends, something that was kind of just cool and not like, I don't know. What do you think of the music? Do you like it?
I think you should keep it because every time I think of your podcast, I think of that music. And it once you listen a couple of times, it's kind of ingrained and like memorable. And I can't think of the podcast without that intro.
At the beginning, now that I'm thinking about it, okay, obviously you've seen the movie Selena, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the beginning of the music for the podcast, it's like, dun, 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 I don't know. You guys heard it. It kind of reminds me at the very beginning of the part where Constance Marie and Edward James Olmos, they're there with the kids in Galveston, like at the seawall. And when she starts doing the watching machine, like that little beat. I don't know why that just came to my head right now, but that's literally what just came to my head. Listen to it. Listen to it. Listen to it.
Okay, fine. I'll go and watch Selena again.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Fine.
fine. Yeah, that's what you want me to do. I got you. I got you. Obviously, we've had events because my biggest thing, honestly, from day one, I always knew I wanted to do live events. Not even gonna lie. From day one, I was like, I do want to do live events. I do want to go on a podcast tour. Obviously, 2020, that wasn't gonna happen because
Right, right.
and still even in 2021, that didn't happen because I feel like it just like it
Yeah,
still
we
was
weren't
going
back.
on. Yeah, we weren't going back. 2022, I felt like people were starting to,
Yes.
but it just wasn't the right time. So 2023 was like, let's do it. And that was the
Mm-hmm.
year. And I will say, because we couldn't do live events, we did virtual wine tastings in 2020 and 2021. And
Mm-hmm.
that was like the first time I could connect people with these wineries, with these Latineo wineries. And the reason I decided to focus on wineries within the US is because I felt like people didn't know about them. I feel like people knew that, oh, yeah, Malbec's from Argentina. There's some
Mm-hmm.
Chilean wines. Some people did or didn't know about Mexican wines, but Mexican wines are definitely, I mean, wines from Mexico, right? Are
Right.
definitely like getting more love now and people are understanding theirs. I always felt like when I found out that there were Latino wineries, I was like, what the hell? Why am I not buying from these wineries?
Right, right.
And then when I started telling people, and all these people were like, we had no idea. That's when I knew the directory was going to come. Like at that
Yeah.
moment, because I had been looking and looking and I couldn't find anything. And at that moment, that's when I knew, okay, we're creating a directory. And it took like a year to put it together because people were referring me, oh, have you tried this? Have you talked
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
these people? Have you talked to these people? And because I wanted it, I didn't want it to just start off with 20. I wanted to start off with as many as possible. And I think we started off with about 70 wineries when we launched
That's
the
amazing.
directory. And we launched the directory, I believe it was September 15th of 2021. I think we launched it the first day of Latin and Hispanic Heritage Month in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about to have a 4-year anniversary in
Which is
September.
amazing. It's funny because a lot of people when I tell them like, oh yeah, about work and everything, and they ask about clients, and then when Wine and Chisme comes up to bat, I'm just, talk about the directory, and people are like, oh, I didn't know that. And it's like, yeah, this is why we need it. Like nobody knows.
Yeah.
Very few people know, and it's not a secret that should be kept. Like this is not a gatekeeping
No,
situation.
girl,
We
no,
need
we do
to
not
let
gatekeep.
people know. So this is why
Yes.
I love the idea, not the idea, love the directory. It's not an idea.
Yeah. No, it's and then when I got the like to do it and to hear from these wineries and these vintners um how much they appreciate it. Like I've been able
Mm-hmm.
to really cultivate these amazing relationships with so many of these wineries and so many of the people because
Mm-hmm.
and they have welcomed me into their community with open arms. And when the wine community is already pretty small, but then when you think about like Black owned wineries, that's even smaller. Latino owned
Yeah.
wineries, that's even smaller. And they tend to know each other and they tend to so and it's not and what I've seen and what I've been a part of is not like they're not trying to compete with one another. Obviously, everybody wants you to buy their wine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the amount of love that they show for one another, the amount of support they show for one another, the amount of support they've shown for me and welcomed me into their community is nothing short of just heartwarming because they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to, they could just been like,
Right.
what? Now they're like, we miss you. When are you coming back to Napa? We haven't seen you in so long. And to like I've got to invite so many of them to my wedding and some of them were able to come and it's just been such a truly like visceral experience. I can't even say it. I don't even want to say amazing or wonderful because those words don't even truly express how appreciative I am for this community, right? The community that we
Right.
built on the podcast, the community that I've built with the vintners. Um it's to me it's I feel like I've said this before on the podcast, but doing the podcast for the first time in my life, Erica, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, what I've been meant to do.
I love that. I love that for you.
Because I mean, obviously, I come from a comms background and I do enjoy
Mm-hmm.
that, but I don't nearly enjoy it as much as doing this.
Right. Well, I mean, this is also it's your platform, right?
Mhm.
It's something that you're building. It's very different than when you just kind of go into a job. Like this is yours.
Which is scary as hell too because let me say I was working when I started it. I was working full time and then obviously during the pandemic I was working like I would like I had a lot of time but I was still growing, I was still learning, which I do every day as we all should, right? Grow and learn in some
Yes.
capacity. And then I started another job at the end of 2021 and I got let go or was it 2021 and then got let go in 2023. Yeah, 2023. Um and by that time I had met my now husband. That's another thing that's changed in 5
Yay!
years. When I started, let me tell you, girl, I was single as single could be and
Single and ready to mingle.
enjoying my single life, right? I was having a good time. And then things change and now I'm a married what I still like sometimes I look at my husband, I'm like, how are we married? Like I like how did this happen? Right. And but then by the time I lost my job, he was like, focus on this. So shout out to my honey, shout out to Antonio, my babe, my love. Um, and you can see now why we're together after being here and meeting
Yeah.
him and spending
Yeah.
time with us.
Ever since that first burger when I landed in San Diego.
He's like, let's go get eats. The, so it's
He had me at burger.
yeah. And so yeah, so much has changed. So we have had virtual events, in-person events. And like I said, those were the ones that started in 2023. And I couldn't honestly think of a better place to start, even though I love my hometown of San Diego. Just having so many friends and so much support in the LA area, I was like, there's no
Mhm.
better place to start. And that's what we did. And my parents showed up. We had, I mean, over 50 people. I think it was like 60 people we
It
had
was
for the first event.
it was a great event. I mean, not just because we produced it, but I was really excited about it, and everything just kind of came into place, and the space, the wine, the attendees, the panel, everything just kind of was like seamlessly blended. And of course,
Yeah.
behind the scenes, like when you're planning an event, it's pandemonium and chaos until the end of the event.
Yeah. I mean,
But then,
that's the key, right? We want to make sure like no, we were panicking. We were like, "Oh my gosh, we got to do this and that." We were doing all the things, but as long as nobody else saw it, that's all that
yeah,
mattered.
yeah. So it's like when you have, like, when you can finally come down from that adrenaline rush of putting on an event and see what we created, like, ugh, it was hands down one of my favorite events that I've
Mine
worked
too.
on in almost 20 years in comms.
Oh my gosh, seriously? Oh my
Yes.
gosh. That's so awesome. And then we
The
had,
LA, the LA and the New York. I mean, I'm biased with the New York because
of course,
obviously
I mean, the New York event, the first New York event.
the first New York.
I will say this. I think obviously I had dreamed about doing the tour since day one of the podcast. And then when we did LA, like we had such a great time and we
Yes,
celebrated and everything. And I was
yes,
like, yes, we're launching. And then we did Dallas and I lived in Dallas for a long time. So I got
yes.
to see my like best friend since I was a freshman in high school. Because she moved, convinced her to move from California to Texas and now she's there forever. and then um and then just having this really important conversation about health and wellness
Right.
and then going to New York. And it was one of those things where I think I dreamt it, right? Like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh. And it's always like you think of like when you think of New York, I think when most people you when you think of the song, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. If I can do this, I can do this.
Right.
And then having it, that moment um where Jazzy was singing. And by the way, you guys, she's freaking like amazing voice, amazing performer. She was on the Tonight Show like a year after, or like less than a year
Yes,
after that. She
yes.
was on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. I'm like, she's such a singer. And this is
That's
freaking
right. That's
awesome.
right.
Um, I had to step away when Jazzy was singing because I was like, holy shit. I'm in New York and this is my event. And I think I said that to myself twice. I'm in New York and this is my event. I'm
Mm-hmm.
in New York and this is my event in New York. And
Yeah.
the other thing was is it was a paid event and we had a full house.
Yep. And it was raining, not a drizzle. It was like a monsoon.
It
And
was
then it cleared
raining.
up.
I had like it was and then then it cleared up like the day of the event. It was still like the streets were still wet, but it
Right.
wasn't raining the day of the event. But
Right.
like we were in the Heights when and we were at the
Oh my God,
hotel
yes.
and it was dumping on us. Remember that we were like,
Yes.
"Oh my
Oh my
gosh."
gosh.
And that hotel, we almost had the event there. So for people who do not know, oh my gosh, this is total behind the scenes, right?
Yes,
We
yes.
were supposed to have the event at a hotel in the Heights because I told Erica. So for those of you who don't know, I like to put my money where my mouth is. So all of the venues, I want it to be like I was always looking for venues to rent that were from communities of color, right? That were in the neighborhoods, that were serving our community. Obviously, the all of the wines are Latino wine brands.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for cheese, like cheese and charcuterie
Right.
vendors that were, from like our first one was she's an indigenous woman. Our one from Dallas, Latina. Same from our vendor in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we wanted to make sure that like I'm very much again put my money where my mouth is. I can't say support our community and not do it myself.
Right.
And so we I know he would offer, like, we were going to work with this hotel. It's not it's not like but it's very much servicing that community.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, all right, we'll go ahead and just we'll do that. And last minute, like a week, was it like a week before or maybe a week and a
Yeah,
half
it
before
might have been, it was a week or two before.
that they're like, oh, sorry, we can't
Right.
do it anymore. Like, do you remember the reason why they said they couldn't do it anymore?
I I don't remember why it was, but they weren't able to accommodate us. And we were freaking out.
Freaking out. So here I go on what is that site? I forget the site where you can go look at
The
Peer
is it
Space, Peer
Peer Space?
Space.
Yeah.
Here we go on Peer Space looking for venues. And I wanted something that was centrally located. Now I found a venue. It wasn't owned by people from communities of color, but it's a woman owned space. So I was like,
Hmm.
all right, cool. It's right in the middle. It's very close to Soho and Chinatown, right in the middle of Chinatown.
Yeah.
Um,
And it
and
fits the theme.
it fit the theme because it was like a pop
Yeah, it's
art
the gallery
museum.
space. Yeah, yeah,
It was a gallery space, which is where we had our very first event in LA. And
yeah. Hmm.
it was really cool looking. So I reached out. Price was right. Like they
And
weren't,
it's
huh?
what we wanted initially. We
Yeah,
wanted an art space.
we did want an art space. So it just, again, the universe just pushes you where you need to be. And they had the date available. And it's because of the location, it was freaking centrally located
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
so we had so many people come and so it was like, we're rushing. Oh my gosh. And then the whole FedEx debacle
Oh my
with
gosh, I don't
the
even want to
one, I
talk
mean,
about it.
yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, mi gente,
I don't
seriously.
even want to talk about it right
But
now.
that ended up being that ended up being such an amazing event. And I will still put it up at some point. My like there was some technical difficulties. So we'll figure that out so we can make sure to get that out because that one we had Karen Vidangos
Yeah.
and Cindy Castro. Karen, the former social media manager at the Guggenheim, now the current social media director at the Met. Let's
Yes.
go, Karen.
Yes.
Let's go. And then we have Cindy Castro of Cindy Castro NYC. And she, like, the dress that I had ordered wasn't able to get done in time. So she lent me this beautiful top. I
Yes.
mean, the softest thing that has ever been put on my body in my entire life. That thing was freaking amazing. So, and we're talking about art and fashion, and Karen's parents were there, and
Yes.
Cindy's husband was there, and they like within the first few minutes, everybody got all emotional.
Yeah, I love that. Just like your parents in LA, I think that was like the first time her parents were like part of her work and saw
Yeah,
her like be on a panel and talk about it. So
I
I
know
think
it's
that
awesome.
that's that's awesome when like your parents can see that and participate and understand what you do. Like it's fantastic.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, like I said, with the LA event, my parents were there and they had never seen anything. And to see my parents go, Mihad, like these people are here for you. they they like what you do.
they, they like your stories.
Like, mom, they like me. They really like me. But I mean, to be able to do all of that and to be able to continue to love, I think that's always like sometimes we start our journey in love with what we're
Hmm.
doing and then it pulls us in another direction. In my
Yeah.
podcast journey, and I'm saying my journey through PR and communications and everything, I've always enjoyed it. Um and I think it has made me better in what I do with the podcast.
Hmm.
I think just being a naturally curious person, but I all I want is for this to grow, because it's really not about me and my story. And I've learned sometimes I talk a little too much. So I try and cut it because if there's something you relate to, you want to be able to
Hmm.
share it, right? So you can deepen that connection. But sometimes I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I get it. I know I talk a lot. Like, duh, I have a podcast. No, but just the fact that you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, you're constantly like, oh wait, like there was a podcast where I was like, what the, I'm cutting all of this out. I didn't know what, I just decided I was gonna take over. And I was really upset with myself. I'm not gonna lie. There's times where I listen to a podcast and I'm like, why am I blabbering? And I try and cut that down. Sometimes there's a point to it. Sometimes there's not. I'm just blabbering. I'm not even gonna lie. And I'm like, okay, we need to cut that out. And then there's sometimes where I'm like, oh, I would. You know how many times it's kind of crazy where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have asked this. And then like 5 seconds later, I'm asking the question I'm thinking I wish I could have asked, because you forget sometimes, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, all right. Then this is a good, then to me, it's always like a confirmation of a good episode.
Hmm.
And I've had people tell me, oh, like, I've had people confirm that, like, oh, I wish you would have, I thought, oh, she should ask this. And then a few minutes later, you ask. And those things are always the biggest compliments to me, as well as people telling me, like, I feel like I'm just sitting down listening to friends talk. And that's always what the goal is. I don't
Right,
want people to feel like it is a chore to listen, because if you feel like it's a chore, then you're not going to listen.
right. I'll tell you my favorite episode
Tell me your
from the
favorite
podcast
episode. Okay,
is
tell.
the one with Leo at
Uh,
RGNY. And
well, are you
it's
biased
my
because you were
favorite.
there?
Yes, yes. I was about to say that I am 100% biased, but it was just, I was able to be like a part of it and like see the setup and the way it was supposed to just kind of be content for social, and it turned out to be an episode, like an entire episode. And it was like so informative. And again, there was no structure, no questions. It was literally a conversation. And I feel like that for me, that episode was so special, and obviously biased because I was part of it.
No, I mean, look, I will say this, I'm going to share something. I don't know if I told you or not. So a little another behind the scenes nugget in regards to that episode. So yes, we thought we were going to get a chance to meet the viticulturist, the head winemaker. The last time I had been to RGNY, it was actually a different winemaker. Great wine, still everything. The difference is now it's a Latino, right? And so when he came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, no clue. So it was even a surprise to me because I had no idea they had changed people.
Hmm.
Not owners, they changed viticulturists. And then he was like, yeah, I have time. And I was like, oh my gosh, all right, let's get it done. I mean, it was like so on the fly. This
Yeah.
is why I try to bring my stuff wherever I am, because you just never know, right? It was
Hmm.
so on the fly, and he went through everything with us, and he has such an interesting story. But so I had to get approval because it wasn't something that we're like anticipating doing.
Right.
So I know Maria, the owner. Maria is great. Like, she's awesome. And so I had reached out to Maria and I was like, hey, I have the episode ready for your approval if you get a chance. She was going through a bunch, like, there was so much stuff around her at that time, that this makes me so proud of the work that we do, because she was like, you know what? I didn't have a chance to listen to it, but I trust you. So if you think it's fine, I'm okay with you releasing it. And to me, like, for somebody to just be like, I trust you,
Right.
especially a business, right? Like I mean, a business that you don't know what was said. You just trust that they're going to do
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
best in your interest and their interest. And so when she told me that, like, you know what, I trust you, go ahead and release it if you think it's good, was to me like, I don't know, I don't even know the word, but it was just like I feel very honored that people trust me. I think that's generally my
Mm-hmm.
feeling. I do feel so honored that so many people have not only come on the podcast, but they've entrusted me with their story, because with
Right.
editing, with all this, you could make things sound crazy, but I try not to edit as much as possible. I try and just edit the sound, not the interview. And I've been pretty successful at that.
And I'm like,
Did I get you emotional, Erica?
a little bit. I've been emotional all week. All right. Well, I do have a question for you. Which, I know this is asking like, which is your favorite child,
Oh
but which
Lord.
has been your favorite episode? Um, in terms of the conversation and just kind of how everything fell together.
Hi, that is hard.
Or,
That is
or
hard.
I'll give you another option.
Okay.
Or the most surprising episode.
Ooh. Well, obviously, I think the most surprising naturally is RGNY, just because we didn't think with Leo,
Right.
because we didn't think that we were gonna have a podcast. We were just going there for content and everything. And by the way,
Mm-hmm.
RGNY is like always so welcoming. I've had people from New York say, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go now. I didn't realize." So I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Honey even was like, "Girl, I'm gonna go," and say, "Wine and Chisme
Yes.
sent me."
Yes, yes.
um, I, it's so I will say one of the interviews that definitely stands out was when we're talking about toxic machismo and toxic masculinity.
Mm.
And that was within, I think that was into year 2. So this was back in 2021 that this interview happened. Um, and just to hear somebody like who came from that, um, who's trying to overcome that and trying to bring to attention to other men what this is and when they're doing it,
Mm.
I think is so important. So that's an interview that sticks out. Another interview that sticks out is there's just so many that I've, like I said, that I've learned so much from. So it's so hard. Um, I think one with Liz Hernandez that we did, and she is a radio personality here in LA. She has the company Wordful, if you've heard of that. She also used to be an entertainment reporter on like Access Hollywood and E and stuff like that. And one thing when she was saying when she got her first job in radio at Power 106, and her name was Luscious Liz on the Good Boy in the Morning, but it was how she was brought in and told she doesn't sound Latina enough. And
Mm.
how many people have been told that, right? We've been told we're too much or not enough. And
Yeah.
um and then putting that against when I was talking to Honey, how on the East Coast, she's like, that's not even a thing. At least New York. I don't want to say East Coast because obviously
Right.
the big coast, but within New York, you're not asked to be any more Latina or any less Latina. You just are.
You just
And
are.
um and so when you hear those two like juxtapositions, it's very interesting. I'm like, to me it's so odd that we're continually fighting that here like on the West Coast, when like especially in California, when a majority of our population is
Mm-hmm.
Latino. So it's, to me, I'm like, it's just very interesting to hear that. And then when you try to internalize it and figure out, well, what can I take from this? And then when I talked to Julissa,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we're talking about how now there are platforms where we like she's talking about her start, right? And having to do all of these things. And now how we have these platforms where we don't have to pretend to be anything other
Right.
than who we are. So they're like, those are some really, I think, great conversations that have been had. Um, there's so many more. I mean, girl, we over 200 episodes. I cannot
Yeah.
like I wish I could say a nugget from each episode, but that would take another 200 years. So
Yeah.
another 200, that would take another 5 years. No. Um, so it's, but I will say, out of all of those interviews, there's only been one that I haven't aired. And the only reason was because for the first half, it was really like, I think she was just trying to get comfortable. And by the time she got comfortable, and then by the time it would have released, uh, the Cheeto in charge had termed out, or had not termed out, he had lost the election. So some of the
Hmm.
things that we talked about were no longer applicable. So I didn't
Right.
air it. So there's only been one episode that hasn't aired that I've recorded.
Hmm. Okay, that's interesting.
Then
That's
another
good.
thing you didn't know. Another
Yes, two.
thing.
I did. We before the end of this episode, we have to do a three. Like a third has to. We got to round this out.
All right, what's your next question?
So my next question, young lady, is um I know you cover so many topics, but what is something that you want to delve deeper into this year? Something maybe that you really want to focus on and talk about this year that
there are
maybe
a
you
couple
haven't before?
there are a couple things, and we've touched on it and we will continue to touch on it. One is immigration and how our community can continue to support one another.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's super important with what everything is going on, and just generally what we can do to, I guess fight back is the only way I can,
Right.
what is happening in this world right now, because it's really a shit show. We're really in a dumpster fire right now. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's so many people that want to do something, but they don't know how, or they don't know how to start, or
Mm-hmm.
they don't know what's going on. So, because I am a graduate of HOPE, which is Spanish Organized for Political Equality, I do have access to some um, political people
Mm-hmm.
that I'm trying to work out time and to interview, um to be able to share, like, what can, not only what can we do, but what can you tell us of what's going on,
Right.
because I think there's so many people who don't know what's going on, and it gets frustrating when you feel
Mm-hmm.
like you're in the dark, and when you feel like you're just seeing one side completely reshape this
Right.
country to not include you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um So I definitely want to talk more about that. I think it's really important. I don't think I've ever shied away from those topics. I just
Right.
haven't, I think I've made my stance on how I feel very known.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you don't know, like, then obviously you haven't followed me on social or listened to any podcast, right?
Are
But
you listening?
are you listening? But I think those are things that are really important, and people don't know where to go to. I've seen so much on threads, and I'm not saying I'm going to be that person, because I'm not. I'm not going to be
Mm-hmm.
that person who's like leading the fight. We
Right.
are all part of the fight. We are all part of it. I just want to be able to share with the access that I am given. That's what I want to say. With the access and the platform that I have, I want to be able to share, like, how to things that can help our community.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
honestly what I want to do. And to kind of circle back to the directory, right? If you're somebody who likes wine, if you're somebody who wants to support, with all of these tariffs going on,
Mm.
it's going to become harder and harder to support wines that come in, because they're going to be tariffed, especially from Mexico.
Yeah.
So it is the perfect time to support Latino wineries based in the US. Um, but no. More like truly seriously, it's just really about providing space. And I want to continue to do that. That's what we've done for the last 5 years. And I will say it sometimes becomes murky when you have somebody, for example, I've had people call and they've had like a Latina owner and a white owner and a black owner and a
Mm-hmm.
white owner. And I actually recently had like a PR person say, "Oh, we have like it's a new wine or like a new wine brand and it's
Mm-hmm.
a black woman and a white woman."
Mm-hmm.
And I was very honest, and I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I didn't know what to do because I have been very deliberate in keeping this space for people who come, men and women, and
Right.
um and those who are binary, to have this space that come from communities of color. And so I let that person know. And that PR person was a black woman. And so I was just really honest with her. And I was like, I'm not sure what to do here
Mm-hmm.
because this is who this space is for. If
Right.
the one wants to come on, I'm absolutely fine. If they only want to do it together, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, and I'm just going to be really honest with you because I've not ever had, now I've had like white Tinas, so to speak, on the podcast before.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, I guess I would technically be considered a white Tina. I don't know. People don't ever think that I'm anything other than Latina. So I don't know. And I know being Latino, I know that's not a race. I know it's an ethnicity. But what the hell else are we supposed to call ourselves?
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
It's really confusing, and it's yeah,
But
that's
we,
like a whole
again,
episode.
those are again conversations that we can continue to have. And I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to have that conversation. But again, I told that PR person and she was like, girl, I understand. I totally get it. I totally understand. And those have been some of them, like, what do I do? And even when you have opportunities for sponsorship, that becomes really hard sometimes too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because look, I'm gonna be very honest with my audience. I am like 2022 was a great year in regards to sponsorships. Um, and but since it's been very difficult, right? I've secured sponsorships outside completely on our own. You've helped secure sponsorships completely outside of that. Um, but right now, as of this moment, the podcast is not making money. And that's what we're working on, right? That's what we're working
Yes.
on. But I just want to
Yes.
be like real, because I know sometimes people think, oh, she's probably making money or oh, she's doing this. Like, this is a labor of love
Yes. Yes.
of what I'm doing. I am very fortunate now that I have a partner and I have a husband who's like, and I work part time to pay my bills, but I'm so fortunate that I have a husband and a partner who's like, I'm going to take care of a majority of the things. I want you to work on your stuff. I want you to build your business. I want you to have the time to do that. And it's not easy. I mean, we're celebrating 5 years, and I'm so excited that we're celebrating 5 years, and I can't wait. 5 years and another 5 years, we're going to be celebrating 10 years. But
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, like, we're going to be in a studio at that point.
Yes.
I
Yes.
won't be recording from home. I will actually have a podcast studio, and maybe the podcast studio is at home. I don't know, but there'll be an actual podcast studio with furniture and different things. And we're gonna be a force in media. I have no doubt about that. Is that we're gonna be a force in media.
Yes.
But when you're a one man band, it takes time, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes I'm like, oh, and sometimes I try and compare myself to others, but and that can be frustrating. I'm like, well, why didn't I get
Mm-hmm.
this opportunity? That's not my opportunity. And
Right.
I have to
Well,
remind myself.
I feel like, I mean, this is not a question. This is just a statement. But
Okay.
I feel like, and not to be sad, but our relationship in the past 2 years has been very much a hand holding and growing together, right? Because we're
Yeah.
both very small businesses in regards to like having a team. And I feel like we've grown a lot together in the past few years,
Yeah.
um, in terms of pivoting and recognizing like our moment is when it's happened. Like when it happens, that's when our moment is, right? And just working and being able to support each other, right? I feel like, and I say this all the time when I get asked about being an entrepreneur, the number one thing is for you to have your tribe, your community for work, for business, right? So if you can have friends that are entrepreneurs as well, that's even better because nobody understands. First of all, nobody understands what you do in comms. So get
No.
yourself some comms friends.
Yes. No, I completely agree with you. And that's what you need. You need your tribe. And I've so lucky. I want, let me give a couple more shout outs because I think it's really important. Shout out to the We All Grow Latina community
Mm.
because let me tell you, from when I started and then when I was, everything was going with my mom with her breast cancer, and then I was having burn, like, they had a freaking like intervention with me, like, it's okay to stop. It's okay to stop. Like, because I was always of the mindset of if I don't stop posting, if I don't stop, if I if I don't have an episode out, everybody's going to forget about me. Truly, it was a fear that I had so deep inside. And it was them who, it was, Ana Lores and um, I think Roxanne was still there at the time, and Melissa is still there. And it was more of like, hey, it's okay. Like, calm, like they literally had an intervention with me, and they're like, you need to stop. You need to take a break. You're freaking out. Like you're overworking yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
it was and I've had such amazing support from that community. Um I I can't even express how much support I've had. I've had so much support from my Hope sisters as well, who are freaking like, yeah, we're gonna go to your LA event. Yes, we're gonna. They had an entire table at the wedding. My Hope sisters, they're like, yes, we're gonna be at your wedding. Yes, we're gonna support you. Yes, we'll go have wine with you. Which a lot of people are like, yes, we'll go have wine with you. But and then honestly, the vintners, I think I already like called them out, or not called them out, but thank them, and I'll continue to thank them for just being so amazing with me. And mi gente, 5 years is, it's come and gone in a blink of an eye,
Mm.
and I most want to thank you. I most want to thank them, because you have allowed me to grow. You have allowed me to learn, to have this journey, and so many have taken it with me. um I just don't I hope that you continue to grow with me. I hope that you share these stories with your families and friends and anybody who you think would enjoy the podcast. Continue to share the directory. Oh my gosh, girl, I've gotten so many people who said, oh, I was going in this area and I found this winery because of the it makes my heart so happy to hear people say that. Like that anytime I hear somebody, please do not think that I can't, like, I've gotten enough. If you use the directory, tell me. I'm okay with like hearing it a million times. I hope I hear it a million times.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
let me hear it a million times that you've used the directory and that you've discovered these new wines and these new wineries and these brand, like, please flood me with those messages, because every time I share that with these vintners, and I get so excited because I want the work that I do to be meaningful. And I feel like the voices being, like, having all of these voices being amplified is meaningful. And then to support these businesses just adds to that.
Mm-hmm. Is America still number one on your list for an interview?
Yes. America Ferrera, just so you guys
Yeah.
know. She is literally, I wrote down who I wanted as guests on a whole like a sheet of paper. Um and it was like people, some it was like people I knew or people I thought I could probably, and then I had like this truly aspirational list, and she is still on it. In fact, I did a digital vision board,
Mm-hmm.
and on there I have actually now I have two on here. I have America and I have Zoe Saldana.
Mm. Okay, so everyone, homework time, homework time. So
Yes.
everyone listening to this episode, when you post on your socials, everyone needs to tag Zoe and America on
Yeah.
here. We got to make this noise and we got to make this happen for this year. The year is long, right?
It
It's
is.
long. We're
Here.
it out. We're going to manifest this. And
That's
as a
right.
group, this is a group assignment. We're going to make this
Group
happen.
assignment. Those who are listening, I will describe it to you. For those who are on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. I hope you'll be able to see this, or I'll put it up. So, my word of the year is abundance. And when I'm talking about family, I'm talking about creating a home because me and my husband want to purchase a home. Whether it's going to happen, whether it'll happen this year or not, it does not matter because this is still my vision for our future. And travel and going to Paso Robles because, like, and going to Cabo San Lucas. We're going to Cabo San Lucas for my sister's birthday. When it comes to business, I like, if you guys do not know, okay, one of the reasons I love Alaska Airlines, first of all, I always get treated amazingly on Alaska Airlines, but they also have a wine flies free program, which
Which a lot of
honestly,
people don't know about.
which a lot of people don't know about. And I've actually taught some of the Alaska Airlines employees about it. When I was going from San Diego to New York, flying Alaska, I was bringing
Yes, that's
wine with
right.
me. And I literally had to show them on their website, no, wine flies free. I'm not getting charged for this. And it's not from every Alaska Airlines airport, it's from certain ones. So you have to go online. So
Mm-hmm.
I have shouted this out so many times. I think it's time for Alaska to give me a brand deal.
Yeah, I think we need to have a second part to this group assignment. And friends, we're gonna tag Alaska on this clip. Jessica's gonna make this into a clip, and we're gonna
Yes.
tag Alaska,
And Marriott International.
and we're gonna tell them what we learned on the podcast.
Yes. It's the goal to guest. I think I'm at 2 or 3 podcasts, but to guest on 25 podcasts for this year. As you can, and then if you're watching this, as you can see, I have a podcast studio in here because we are going to no longer work uh from this chair in my living room. I can't wait till I have my own podcast studio, whether it's in-house or somewhere else, where I can close the door, where I can have complete privacy. I mean, yes, my husband is at work, but I have the dogs here, as you heard earlier, who can go crazy at any time. I have Zoe and America. Like, my goal is to get them on the podcast this year. This year, 2025, we is the time. And when I was in New York in 2024, we had somebody from Wine Enthusiast say he wants to interview me, but it hasn't happened yet. So we have that on there. And then doing a collaboration with Mosel Mezcal in Seattle. So those are my business things. Just really celebrating life. That's what I want to continue, to do as much as we can, right? I can
Mm-hmm.
Just because we're fighting for our community constantly doesn't mean we can't celebrate the good things as well. And I think sometimes we
Yes,
struggle with that, right?
yes.
It almost feels like we're like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty because I'm celebrating the good things I
It's that
have.
Latino guilt.
I feel like because yeah. So it's about saving, about self-care, about friendship. And that's what I have in myself. So I'm excited about it because I just really feel like it's very much me. And that's 2025, girl. That's what we're looking for. Did we talk enough? I think we talked enough. I hope you guys are feeling this. Like, I know it probably sounds like, oh, we're going to celebrate, but there's so much like ups and downs and growth
Yeah.
and everything that it's, you know, oh my gosh,
And it's
5 years.
It's a celebration year.
Yeah, it's going to be a year of celebration. I absolutely believe that. I know that's what's going to happen. It's a year of celebration because 5 years is a, is a big milestone. You
It's a
don't,
business turning point.
it is. And I think that's why we're working on this new thing that we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
It's overwhelming in the best possible way. And even over the last couple of weeks, I've had a really bad creative I've just been really stumped creatively.
Right.
And this morning I woke up and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I have so many things on my mind." Blah, 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 blah. And I really want to focus on more wine content this year to really share more about what's happening. Um, I want to continue to amplify these voices across communities of color. Again, that is my North Star. Is
Yep.
That's what the goal of this podcast is, right? Um, and that includes the wines, because the wines that we're continually promoting, and I'm going to start putting in, not necessarily as far as interviews, but as far as content wise, more wines outside of Latino owned wineries, because I do focus
Mm-hmm.
so much on that. But I think there's all these other types of wines that aren't
Yeah.
necessarily found, so we're going to be expanding on that as well. And just honestly just try to bring the best thing that we can, trying to bring the best interviews that we can, the best guests that we can, the best wines that we can, the best information that we can. That's what it's all about. And standing up for our community.
Yes.
I mean, mi gente, thank you so much. I know this was kind of a lot. I mean, how do you put what happens in 5 years and in my language, right? Because you guys want me to share how I'm sharing it. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who would be like, do it totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, right? How I'm doing it's okay. How I'm celebrating is okay. And honestly, I didn't do a big celebration on the day because I was, like I said, I was so creatively blocked that I didn't even know what to do. So we ended up doing a live. Um, but I just didn't feel like that was enough. And I wanted, like, Erica's been on this journey with me for over half of the time for the last 3 years. And I was like, who better to share this with? Who's, because I think besides you, there hasn't really been. And Juan Pablo, he edits the podcast, but he's not ever
Mm-hmm.
part of it. So I was like, who else could I talk to about what has happened over the 5 years? And who then the person who has been with me for more than half the time and is helping me grow.
I love you so much, amiga.
I love you too. And mi gente, I love you. And I just want to say again, thank you so, so much for believing in me and believing in this community and listening and, sharing and all of the things. Because again, if it weren't for you and if it weren't for the guests, we would have nothing. And with that, happy 5 years of wine and chisme.
We gotta insert claps.
Insert claps here. And until next time, mi gente, saludos.
Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.